Hello students, welcome to the MOOC session of e-learning. Today we will be discussing on the industrial relation in India, the magnitude and causes of industrial disputes. Now, first of all, if we consider the and for any country, economic development depends on as well as the overall growth of the Indian economy, overall growth of the economy of that country considering India. Now, if we consider the industrial activities, we have to consider the strong relationship between the employees and the employers also. Capitalists are the employers of the industrial unit and workers are the employees of the industrial unit. It was realized by the first 5-year planning commission in 1951 that the strikes and gheraos are the right of the workers, and they said that the stress of the administration as well as the effects of parties should however be on avoidance to settle the internal peace and tranquility. Now, when we are considering the industrial activities, we basically deal with the interest of the employers as well as the interest of the employees also. What are the interests of the employers? They usually want to reduce the real wage rate and they want to increase the working hour. At the same time, the employees actually wants to increase their real wage rate and the employees wants to improve their working condition. So, there is conflict between these two parties about the industrial activity, and this contradicting view gears up the disputes and struggles in the industrial sector, and it sometimes manifests as gheraos and strikes and also the lockouts. Now, if we consider the development process, if we follow the development process of any less developed country, we will find that there is a change in the structure of the country as well as the occupational structure of that country. This is also changing over the period. What are the changes we can observe here? Workers migrate from the agricultural sector to the industrial sector and then to the service sector gradually. Secondly, there is increase in the formalization of the industrial sector and also the service sector. So, there is urbanization started and continued due to this formalization of the secondary and tertiary sector. But these features are not very much observed in India. For India, we have to first study the structure and feature of the Indian labor market, and then we have to study the magnitude of industrial disputes and also the causes of industrial disputes. Now, if we consider the feature of Indian labor market, we will find that migration of the laborer, it started from the rural sector to the urban sector, first of all, and the second one is these laborers are largely unskilled. They are not properly skilled or efficient to absorb in the industrial units in urban area. And thirdly, since their categories are homogeneous, they are not unified to place their demands in front of the employers. So, the labor market structure and pattern is a particular case of India. It is to some extent different from other less developed countries. There is huge upsurge of the informal sector in India if we consider the period from 1989 to 2015. But after 2000, we see that there is flattening of the informal sector, so the employment of this sector also falls. And There is increase in contractualization of labor. Contractualization of labor means there is a basic contract between the employers and the employees, and it is actually benefited the employers. Why? Because they don't have to follow any factory law, or they don't have to follow in labor law, which basically deals with the social security, the job security, the medical benefits in the interest of the employees. There is increase in contractual labor. It actually hampers the interest of the employees. And there is informalization and contractualization, which basically deinstitutionalizes the labor market. And also India has the low quality level of labor. They are not skilled, they are not trained, they are not efficient and productive enough to make a cost effective production process. Now, for any country like India, if we consider the efficient operation of industrial unit, the generation of revenue, the generation of profit, and the cost effective production process, then we have to consider a cordial and strong bonding between the employers and the workers. And that is the case which we will discuss here, because violation of this relationship actually violates the tranquility and peace of the industrial sector, which generates industrial disputes. Now, what is industrial dispute? Industrial dispute is cessation of work in a unit when, for any matter, there is breakdown of the relationship between the employers and the employees. If this happens, then there is increase in struggles, the indiscipline, the violence within the industrial unit, which actually hampers the overall cordial relationship between the employers and the employees, who are actually the member of trade unions. So there is a relationship which actually falls down in the industrial unit, and the relationship, when it goes down or when it falls down, there actually obstacle in the efficient production process, and the cost effective production process does not take place. Now, industrial disputes manifestation is basically two ways. The first one is strikes and gheraos, which actually dealt with the employees, and the strikes and gheraos are the temporary stoppage of work by the workers due to some enforcement of demand. And the second manifestation is lockout. What is the lockout? Lockouts are the temporary upholding or temporary withholding of the workers due to the disputed matter, and these lockouts are called out basically by the employers. So we can say that there are two manifestations which comes out due to the industrial dispute. One is the strikes and gheraos, and other is the lockout. Now, if we consider the magnitude of the industrial dispute which took place over the years in India, and if we consider the data from Central Statistical Organization Statistical Release 2020, we will find that past 10 years gives us declining trend of the industrial disputes, and also the number of workers engaged in the industrial disputes and the loss of mandates, these are fluctuating over the years if we consider the years from 2012 to 2022. It is very interesting to see that increasing number of lockouts, and it overshoots actually the number of strikes. Why this happened in India? Because of the new economic policy which was introduced in India, and it favored the privatization of the industrial units. When there is privatization in the industrial units, then the private businessmen or the entrepreneurs, they basically don't care about the job securities, the medical benefits, the social securities given to the workers. They apply their whims. They can in any case retrench the employees when they wish. And 70% of the disputes from the manufacturing division, followed by insurance sector, financial sector, the wholesale and retail trade, and the motor vehicles and motorcycle sectors. And there is, if we consider the data of past 3 years, we will find that Tamil Nadu is the state which has highest industrial disputes, as well as the workers engaged in the disputes and the number of man-days lost due to these dispute. These are also highest in this state. And also we can say that in 2019, 49 industrial disputes have taken place in private sector, as well as 49 industrial disputes have taken place in private sector and public sector also. So what happened in India? There is declining trend in industrial disputes, as we see in empirically. But if we consider the state-wise variation, we will find that Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, Bombay, Gujarat, these are the states in which we have moderate number of industrial disputes among the total number of disputes recorded in the Central Statistical Organization's report. Now, we have to consider what are the main causes of industrial disputes. We can categorize these disputes into three causes. One is economic causes, the second is managerial causes, and the third is psychological causes. Economic causes deals with the increase in wages and salaries, increase in allowances and bonuses. Also, there is manifestation of rationalization and automation. The managerial causes deals with the anti-labor philosophy of employers. It means the inadequate labor welfare policy, there is no job security, and rationalization of wage policy was not there. And what are the political causes? Political causes basically deals with the interference of political parties in the internal matter of industries. Now, if we consider the causes generally, we can say that due to the faulty individual behavior, due to the organizational structure, psychological factor, and leadership style, these are the basic causes of industrial dispute. If any individual, he is irrational or erratic in behavior, then there should be the hamper of peace or tranquility in the industrial sector. If there is organizational structural fault or faulty organizational structure, then there may be there may arise the violence or indiscipline within the industrial unit. If there is psychological factors, if any individual or the managerial part of the industrial unit is psychologically irrational or psychologically erratic, it will hamper the overall atmosphere of the industrial unit. Economic and technical environment also plays an important role. If the economic and technological environment or technical environment is very much clear and this is conducive to the workplace with the workers, they can work with better equipments, with better economic support, and with the technological support, then there will be increase in productivity obviously. But if it hampers it, there is defect in economic and technological environment, then it will hamper the peace of the industrial unit. Finally, the legal and political environment play an important role. If there is any illegal activity takes place in the industrial sector, if there is political interference, too much political interference in the environment, then the industrial dispute may crop up in these industries. And what will happen? There may be gheraos, there may be strikes by the employees, or there may be lockouts called by the employers. Now we shall discuss on the causes of industrial disputes. First of all, we have the point wages and allowances. This may cause industrial dispute. 30% of the total industrial dispute comes from the wages and allowances issues. The employees basically says that they want increase or hike in wages and allowances, but it does not take place because there is increase in wages and allowances. This has a very minimum rate which was offered by the employers. And what happens when there is inflation? The employees wants to increase the wages and allowances so that they have constant real wage. But if there is minimum increase in wages and allowances, then they are not being able to maintain their standard of living with the inflation rate. And there is violation of the law, there is violation of the labor law and factory law, and it actually increases the struggles and the indiscipline in the informal sector and also the industrial sector, which leads to the industrial dispute. The second point is issues in bonuses. So the 48% of the total industrial dispute, it basically comes from the issues of bonuses. Basically, the employees wants to increase their bonus along with other allowances, but that when the trade unions put their demand in front of the employers, it was not dealt with the humanity ground. And what happens again here? There is violence and indiscipline, and this actually returns to the fallout of the peace and tranquility, and there is again the result of industrial dispute. If we consider the third case, that is the cause of industrial dispute, which comes from the personnel retrenchment of the employees, the leave rule violation, and also the heavy workload. Here we can point out some thing like there is no job securities, personnel and retrenchment of the employees, there is long working hour, there is intolerable working condition and living condition, and also there is no medical benefit offered to the workers. It basically hampers their standard of living, their living condition. They basically goes to the sustained life, and they actually have the minimum support from this industrial unit, which was not been taken by them, as they are wanting a moderate standard of living from their employers. So what happens here? Again, there is peace and tranquility breakdown, and there is result of the industrial dispute. We can here mention the managerial issues also. When there is privatization of the industrial labor force, then there is increase in the private sector, there is increase in the private entrepreneur, private businessmen also. They apply their whims to retrench the employers. They actually punish the employers when they want, and also there is victimization of worker. They are vindicative in their nature, and there is violation of factory law also. All of these result to the industrial dispute because there is strikes and gheraos by the employees, and sometimes there is lockout called by the employers. The next point, we can say that there is indiscipline and violence which took place 7 to 9% in 1989 to 2013, and there is increase in the indiscipline and violence up to 26 to 40% due to violation of factory law and violation of different labor laws. There is privatization and disinvestment, and employees' militant attitude and their bad relationship between the employers and the trade union actually hampers again the working condition of the industrial unit, and all of these result to the industrial dispute. If we consider the next point, that is the Charter of Demand. What is Charter of Demand? Charter of Demand is the series of demand that is proposed by the trade unions in front of the employers, and these demands actually include the increase in wages and salaries, the increase in working condition, the improved living standard, the demand for social benefit, medical benefit, and the other allowances and bonuses. But violation of this may cause industrial unrest as the years roll on. If we consider the next point, that is the political factor. This is very much important to discuss the political factor, the political interference in the industrial dispute, because we know that all the trade unions are backed by different political parties. Now, when there is vested interest by the political leaders or political parties, then the trade union serves as their part in front of the employers, and they put their demand as there is the political backup between them, and internal issues transformed into the political issues. There are contractualization of labor which hampers the interest of the employees to work in the industrial sector, whereas this contractualization actually encourages the employers to employ the contract labor because they are exempted from the factory law and the labor law. If we consider the passage of time, the trade unions become stronger gradually. They are politically conscious also. So now this factor, this political factor, can be to some extent controlled by the trade union if they wish. And one point we must mention here, sometimes there are different trade unions, they are working within one industrial unit. So there generates inter-industrial trade union rivalry, and there is different part of trade unions in a whole part of the industrial unit. So different parts of trade union or the sub part of the trade unions in a general whole part, it becomes very difficult to control all of them and to maintain the peace and tranquility in the industrial sector when the production process is going on due to different issues related to wages, salaries, their living standard, their bonuses, their different benefits, some peace and tranquility must be hampered, and there is the industrial dispute over the period and the passage of time. Over the passage of time, it continues, and it started from pre-independence, and now to some extent it is controlled, but we are not being able to control all the industrial disputes, all the matters to solve very easily. This contractualization of labor, as I have already said, this is the exempted part from the factory law or from the labor law. So, the employers are very much interested to employ the contract laborer, but the laborers are not much benefited from this contract. So, they are unwilling to offer themselves optimally, and this increases the labor unrest. As a result, peaceful work environment cease to exist. So what happens here? Due to this contractualization, rationalization and informalization of these industrial units, there is deinstitutionalization of the labor force, deinstitutionalization of Indian labor market, which basically result to the increase in industrial dispute. As we know, for economic development or to increase the opportunity of employment in any country, the industrial sector should play a vital role, and development of the industrial sector is very much needed. And as I have said, industrial sector will play a different role in the economic development if it operates optimally, with efficiency, with full productivity and full capacity. It will happen if there is conducive and peaceful environment between the employees and the employers. There is improved working condition in the industrial unit. Employees should get conducive work environment, and employers should expect efficient productive activity by the employers. If this happen in any industrial unit, then that industry should play a vital role in economic development. To maintain industrial peace, with the changes in business environment and stepping into the liberalization and globalization in the Indian economy, the country should follow three aspects. The first one is amendment of old labor law, because in India we are dealing with the old labor law. We have to modify this labor law. We have to actually implement the modern labor law, which will be more labor centric, not the employer centric. Second point is implementation of labor market reform. Since independence, we do not have much reform regarding the Indian labor market. This is very much important to introduce different benefits that will be offered to the employees of the Indian industrial unit, and that will actually encourage them to offer their potentiality, to offer their total productivity, so that there will be cost effective production over the period, which will benefit the employers at the same time. And the aspect we can deal here is modification of poorly enforced legislation. The legislation which is enforced here, that is very poor, and from the past period it is continued, and this should be actually implemented in a better way, and it can happen if the policy makers take some step to implement the legislation to reform the labor market and to modify the Indian labor law. If all this happens, if some of these part take place in Indian economy, in the industrial sector, then I can say that, or we can say that the development of the industrial labor market is possible, and at the same time there will be much control over the industrial disputes. There will be peace and tranquility prevail among the workers and the employers, so that there will be peace, there will be improved working condition, there will be overall working conditions benefit which will be enjoyed by the employers and the employees at the same time. And as a result, this will actually lead to the industrial development, and that industrial development will help overall economic development of any country like India. Thank you.